Thank you everybody for joining us today. We are very excited to share how we are setting the bar for quality online learning at Polk State College. As Tom mentioned, I am Katie Ragsdale and I'm an instructional designer here at Polk State College.
And I am Carleigh Okwali and also an instructional designer.
So we're going to share with you today some components that helped us develop a quality rubric. We're going to share some strategies for planning and developing a quality rubric that includes stakeholders, and then share some methods for applying that quality rubric at your institution. So a little bit about Polk State. If you're not familiar with us, we are in Polk County, centrally located in Florida, halfway between Orlando and Tampa. We have two campuses and 4 centers. And some of our enrollment here is we have about 13,000 students, 760 faculty that we serve. But the thing to note here is that the majority of our students, over half of them, are part-time. So we serve a very diverse population. We're going to use COVID as kind of our starting point here in 2020. And we're going to talk a little bit about where we were at that time. So as far as support goes, we had 2 full-time technologists and 1 director in our learning technology department. And we served those 760 faculty and 13,000 students with those 3 members. Now that doesn't include instructional designers. Instructional design doesn't come formally until 2021. So instructional design was pretty much up to the individual instructor. Now, all distance learning faculty were required and still are required to attend or participate in online teaching certification, which gives them some exposure to Quality Matters, but it doesn't dive too deep into course design and things like that. Under our umbrella, we also have teaching and learning innovation centers. And in those spaces, we do have part-time lab assistants that help with instructional video and recording. They help with technology checkout. Instructors can come and check out laptops for their classes, iPads, different types of technology for their students. And we also create e-learning and multimedia activities for them as well. And we do have a shared governance model at our institution. So we have a distance learning committee, which governs all of our distance learning practices. So they select our third-party tools, they're involved in strategic planning, and they are the reason that we are subscribing to Quality Matters. Some of our distance learning enrollment data prior to COVID, we sustained about 30% online, 100%. But of course, March happened in 2020 and everybody went fully online. The year after that, we hovered around 86%, depending on the given term. That was our average. But the academic year after that, in fall 2021, that is when we kind of returned to as normal as you could get back to, and our fully online or fully distance learning enrollment was 52%. So still not as high as it was during and immediately after COVID, but higher than it was prior to that. The key point here is that 79% of our students are enrolled in at least 1 distance learning course. So that is a huge number that we never had before.
All right, so I'm going to talk to us about our starting point. The state of Florida has an initiative for their 2025 strategic plan, and basically they set forth parameters for institutions to have their courses designated as quality. So you have a quality and a high quality designation. So the high quality designation would be a full QM review. So that is 3 QM trained reviewers reviewing the course. It has to meet those 23 QM essential standards. They follow the 85% score overall rule, and they look at accessibility. The parameters set forth for a quality designation by the state was that you had to have 2 QM trained reviewers to review the courses. You had to meet those 23 QM essential standards. But other than that, it was up to the institution how they were going to designate those courses. So we, at our institution, came up with the idea of a rubric. So we're kind of following QM. And we also wanted to look at that accessibility piece as well, because that's very important. All right, so what is our why? So our department wanted to set forth in establishing that college level bar of quality that we could build upon. And we really wanted to tie that into our vision at Polk State College, which is that we will be the first choice for higher education in Polk County. And then we can align that to our statewide initiative in Florida to create a culture of quality for online education. So what are our standards for quality? So we looked at our existing assessment measures that we had here at Polk State College. So we already had the QM, the full QM review process, but that is an elective process here at Polk State College. It's, the external QM review. And then we looked at what evaluative measures we had. So we have our student perception of instruction. We have our faculty online observation form. We have our guidelines for teaching online, and we have our institutional procedures. And that could be the backbone for what we built our rubric upon. So our standards are the quality designation, the state requirements, the 23 essential QM standards, which they need to meet, and our existing evaluative measures. And this really helps us to then have that faculty buy-in because we're using these evaluative measures that we already have in place at Polk State College. We brought in our distance learning committee throughout the process to help build the rubric. And then we had to take that rubric to our faculty senate for approval. All right, so let's take a look at our rubric. So we split our rubric into 3 sections so we could chunk it a bit. We have our first section, which is focused on organization and content. We have 4 standards, and our major elements there are the course schedule, making sure that we have office hours available to our students, the organization and the structure of the course, and also looking at that accessibility piece. For our second, we have learning assurance. That is our biggest section. It's 8 standards, and it's really where we dive into making sure that we have measurable objectives for our students, making sure that we align our course content to those objectives, and making sure that we have interactivity pieces so that we have our students not only interacting with content, but also interacting with their instructor and their peers. And for our third section, the faculty-student interaction, 4 standards, and the major elements there are making sure that we have clear communication between our instructors and our students, that they are setting forth clear expectations within the course, that they're giving those instructions for the course, and they're also providing all the support services that we provide at Polk State College to their students so that they can be successful. All right, so if you look at a rubric here, we tried to model QM in a way. We want to have we had our standard on the left, and then we have our QM standard that aligned to our standard highlighted there at the top. And then we went ahead and included any of our existing evaluative measures. So the student perception of instruction, the faculty online observation form, and our guidelines for teaching online. And we really had those two to the right, and the columns 2 really aligned those to our standard that we are creating on our rubric.
And I just added a link to this rubric in the chat for you to view.
Great, thank you, Katie.
But I'm going to kind of talk about how we apply this rubric. So I mentioned before that fall 2021 is going to be kind of where we pinpoint the start of this. And that's where we decided that we were going to review all of our online course offerings for that term to provide introductory scores based on our rubric. So Carleigh and I pulled a report for all of our online course offerings, and we reviewed all of those courses for baseline data against our rubric. We didn't review existing QM certified courses because those courses already have high quality designation, but this just gave us a starting point for where we need to grow upon. That's how we apply it, but during the quality designation process, faculty apply it as well. So they participate in a quality online course design seminar, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But in this seminar, they are doing a self-assessment using this rubric against their course. So they're reviewing their own course with this rubric, providing evidence for each standard. After the initial process is complete and they are designated, they do have the option to submit additional courses for review. It's a little bit separate process, but they do have to do the self-assessment during that as well. So the seminar is an asynchronous online seminar. Depending on the term, it's either 8-week or 6-week. The key components of that are the faculty self-review, a community of practices so that they have whole group peer-to-peer interaction. And then we do require them to meet with us one-on-one at least once during the duration of the seminar, but they can choose to meet with us multiple times. And that just gives them the opportunity to work with us individually and ask specific questions tailored to their courses. Following the seminar and following designating their courses, they do receive badging in 2 ways. So they receive a faculty badge on their people page or their bio page on our website, as well as a course badge for students to see. We recognize them on LinkedIn with a graphic, and then they are designated in our catalog as well as the Florida Shines catalog. The seminar outline, it's going to vary just a little bit depending on the length of it, but the first part is going to be introducing them to instructional design, those learning theories and ID models, where they really don't have a lot of background overall in these practices. And so that's going to be our context and the purpose for a lot of the things that we share with them. And then in the latter half of that seminar, they are really diving into our quality rubric. They're performing the self-assessment. They're being introduced to regular and substantive interaction, how to write measurable objectives, and how to align their assessments with their objectives. And they're also creating a course introduction for their students. And at the end, they're going to perform, or we're going to perform a final course review and then designate their course as quality before they implement that course.
All right, so let's look at the self-assessment piece. So we have our rubric kind of built into a worksheet. So we have our standard on the left, and then we provide them some clarification in the middle, kind of just giving them an idea of what we're looking for or how they could meet that standard. And then we want them to provide the evidence on the right-hand column there. And we really want them to just go through their course, look at it through new eyes, and then provide that evidence there. It's kind of a way to say, well, if I'm having to provide evidence and I don't really see it or I don't have it in my course, that's kind of a way to realize that. Or if they have a future goal in mind that they would like to add, they can put that there as well, and we encourage them to do that. And then we have a confirmation report. So this is when they after they have done their self-assessments and they are putting their course in for their final review, they will have this report that they fill out. So on the left, we have our standard again, and then in the middle, we want them to provide that feedback that we have given them. We try to provide extensive feedback, giving them suggestions, just like you would do in a QM review. And we want them to have to kind of copy that feedback from our LMS, and they put that into the report. So it's kind of another step where it's like, well, maybe they'll read that there and really, take that in. And then they will put in their changes that they made. So the way that if they did not meet a standard, they can put the changes that they made there to now meet the standard, as well as identify their future goals.
So to date, we have offered 5 cohorts, including our pilot cohort, and we have designated we have had 65 faculty, full-time and adjuncts participate in this process. And we've designated 82 courses as quality. Now we have 65 initial, and then some have selected or submitted additional courses for review. And then it's important to note that we have 37 courses designated as high quality through Quality Matters currently. We have 7 additional courses in progress right now, and we are beginning we're in the process of starting our next cohort in a couple weeks. So we'll have another group there as well. As far as the impact, we've offered 108 quality designated course sections since we've started. And in those course sections, we've met or impacted over 2,100 students. Now, something that we didn't initially have that we implemented last summer and it's now a requirement is a student survey. So we developed an anonymous student survey that participants must implement into their quality courses so that we can gather student feedback on course design related to our rubric. And we'll we'll just talk about the growth so far. So we mentioned earlier that we performed a baseline review for all of the courses. So as far as quality scores overall, the average growth is 34% from baseline to final. And it's important to note that we do review each standard and they must meet at 85% or higher, which models Quality Matters. And as far as accessibility, we use the Ally accessibility tool, which integrates into Canvas, and it provides an overall, not totally perfect, but a good idea of accessibility for elements of a course. And we look at that score at baseline as well as final, and the average increase of that score is 18%. Our highest growth so far is 36% in one course. And some of the feedback we've received from faculty and students is overwhelmingly positive. We're kind of reviving some of our instructors' interest in teaching again and sharing things that they didn't know was available to them. But we also take any constructive feedback as well, and we make adjustments as best we can in our course. So we have an exit survey that's anonymous for instructors. We have an open discussion in our second community of practice where they can share feedback about their experiences and what works and what doesn't. And then any issues that we have during the duration of the seminar, any questions or things that we've had to clarify, we're making adjustments there as well. So we are also making constant improvements to our course. So just to recap what we've shared with you already, so we identified some components that aided in the development of our quality rubric. We capitalized on the state's initiative, and we also utilize existing evaluative measures to reduce those barriers and to garner faculty and administrative support. In determining the strategies for planning and developing our rubric that included our stakeholders, we utilized faculty voices throughout the entire process. So from the very beginning in developing the rubric and moving forward from there, we involved our faculty primarily through distance learning committee, but throughout the process, asking them what they wanted and then going to faculty senate after that. We also have positive relationships with key faculty leaders and administrators. Carleigh and I have been at this institution for a very long time in different capacities. So we've been able to build those relationships and partnerships with different roles at the institution so that they can trust us and trust what we are doing. And for planning methods for applying the quality rubric at your institution, we incorporate our quality initiatives into our strategic plan, and we provide practical applications. So anything that we're teaching in the course, instructors are learning and they're able to apply it readily. And if they're not comfortable or if they have questions, they work with us. And so we are ensuring them that they are not alone in this at all. And lastly, we recruit faculty that promote our process. You know, faculty learn best from other faculty. And so having their colleagues encourage them throughout the duration of the seminar is really helpful in getting more participation. And we recruit faculty to share their experiences as much as possible with any marketing that we do, any newsletters that we do with our public affairs office, and in our professional development days as well. So I wanted to touch on a couple questions that we had sent to us prior to our webinar today. So one of those was, what was the most challenging category to determine quality through our process? And the most challenging or the most common is objectives and alignment. So many faculty just aren't aware of the importance of objectives in their courses. And sometimes they think that an assignment might align to a specific objective, and this is just giving them an opportunity to really think about that and make sure that it is. Another question was, is there anything that we know now that we wish we implemented in the rubric in the beginning? So not necessarily in our rubric. The main thing that we added in our rubric from the very beginning was RSI, was highlighting those elements that we already had in place in our existing measures, but really highlighting those in specific standards on our rubric. And you'll see those noted on the rubric that I shared in the chat as well. But the thing that we didn't think about initially was a student survey. So we didn't implement that until I think cohort 4. And so now it's required and we're getting that student feedback. We had some students contact their instructors and share some comments as well, but this just gives us a fail-safe, if you will. And then that confirmation report. So initially, we just had the instructors submit their courses and they didn't explain the changes that they made. adding that confirmation report really helped us, and it really helped them ensure that they actually met those standards and made changes necessary to meet the standards that they weren't meeting before, and to kind of reevaluate the areas where they wanted to make changes and then kind of didn't remember those areas. And then lastly, what is our process for maintaining quality? This is a big one in the registration. So we're very limited in resources, and this is still relatively new. So we're kind of working on developing that process formally, but we are also working on incorporating it into a distance learning procedure. We do, however, have designation on a 4-year cycle. So modeling after QM, having to go through recertification, any past certifiers will have to go through a recertification process. It's not going to be as extensive as the initial process, but they will have to go through and recertify just so that we know that we're maintaining quality. And with that, we open it up to questions.